Well, ladies and gentlemen, if it's Wednesday, March 25th, 2025, it must be time for Material Issues. This is episode number 197. Please stay tuned. We got great guests tonight, and we've got a big announcement coming up at the end of the episode. But I'm Mark Hershberger of Pop Detective Records. I'm over here in moderately warm South Jersey. And joining me, as always, my very good friend from not so sunny Southern California, where it's the middle of the afternoon. He's the president of the International Pop Overthrow Festival. He's also a very good friend of mine and yours, Mr. David Bash. David Bash, you look great. I like the pinstripes, bowler hat, bling. How you feeling tonight? All good?
Feeling good. Although, again, as you pointed out, it's not tonight out here. So I have no idea how I'll be feeling tonight.
Tonight, well, you can tell me because it'll be the future, and then we can bet on it later on, which is good. Oh, it's great! It's a great day. The puppies are great.
Good.
The new puppy is doing really well. She had a little bit of an injury the last 2 days and had to rush her to the vet. And of course, when you take her to the vet, all of a sudden the injury doesn't make itself apparent, and they're like, "Where's the injury? I don't see anything." I'm like, "I swear she was bleeding to death for the last 48 hours," but.
Right.
You know, that's it. And no, I know we talked about this briefly, but there's my brand new Warren Spawn 1954. Just got it. Yep. SGC Near Mint 7. Really nice. Look at that card.
Yeah, well, you know how I feel about the grading system and what a racket that can be.
It is. But by all appearances, this is a beauty. The corners are sharp.
You did well.
I got lucky. Yeah, I got very lucky there. Yeah,
who won the Hank Aaron?
Don't know, but some guy that only bought one spot, and you got the
somehow it turned out to be Kenny Golden, who seems to win all of these things.
Yeah. You know, but yeah, somebody got it. Somebody did well. But I'm happy. I mean, I got a slabbed because they weren't all slabbed. They weren't all sevens.
Well, no, I guess they wouldn't all be.
And I got a Hall of Famer. Some people just got some what they call commons, even though they're still nice from the 1954 set. But I got lucky. You know, I'll take that. You know, if I couldn't get the Hank or the K line or a couple of the other ones.
Not bad. Actually, I'm gonna go get something I just bought. I forgot to bring it in, but
look at it. Look at the Yankee pinstripes just for the show. Yeah, everybody, stay tuned. We got some great guests coming up momentarily. And at the end of the show, we've got a big announcement. Not only are we going to announce a number of guests coming up in the next few weeks, but we got something interesting everybody's going to be interested in. So stick around. There's our good friend Tim Allen. Good spring afternoon, evening. Good to see you, Tim.
Did you see what number I'm wearing?
Oh, who's 15? Tell me quick. I forget.
Come on, really?
Yeah, I forget. Is that Mickey?
No, Ricky was 7. It's the captain, Thurman Munson.
Oh, it was Thurman. Okay. I had to remember. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, who unfortunately passed away right around the time I was a student of our guest.
Wow.
So, but yeah, I mean, found one of these online for way less than it normally goes for, so I had to grab it. But yeah, tomorrow's baseball season. Our guest is a huge Detroit Tigers fan. In fact, I wondered, one of our guests is rather, I wondered if he might be wearing a Tigers jersey because I've seen him in film do that. But yeah, I cannot wait for the season to begin tomorrow. And hopefully my Yankees will do well. You know, if you're a Yankees fan, it's either win the World Series or you had a terrible year, which is of course a frustration since that hasn't happened since 2009. Yep. Yeah, I'm all decked out. We were talking about watches. I got my Yankees watch out. So
yeah, you're all Yankeed out.
I gotta send a text.
I know we got this is all part of our surprises tonight. We got things going on this evening, and we've got to multitask on this one when we bring our guests up. Sure. So,
here we go.
You go ahead. You send your text. I'll keep talking. But people, please stick around. We got some big announcements going on through the rest of the show. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to our guests tonight. I know they mean a lot to David, and I had to go back and start.
Yep.
I had to go back and start, rethinking my whole views on perspectivism. That's the route I always went down. So we'll have an argument over Nietzsche. And,
Nietzsche, Ray Nietzsche, or
yes,
Frederick
Ray Nietzsche.
Okay.
I always mix them up with Nietzsche.
Yeah, I learned something in our guest class.
You did.
No,
yes,
I knew who he was even before that, and he didn't.
You paid attention.
He didn't really teach about Nietzsche per se. Anyway, I picked this up yesterday at Deadly Wax Records in.
Nice.
Granada Hills, where Rena and I got married. You were there.
Yep.
In Granada Hills. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, DJ copy of the third Nas album. And when I started collecting in the late 70s, those Nas albums were going for a lot of money. In fact, more money than they go for now. So in 1978 money, that in today's money, they would have probably been going for about, I don't know, $300-400. But when the reissue campaign came out and the market got saturated with all of them, it somehow caused the originals, the value of the originals, to go down. So this one was only $25, which it's
good grab. Yeah,
it was a good grab. Yes, but speaking of the late 70s, that is the temporal period of when I first met our special guest tonight. And he was my philosophy professor in a couple of classes in 79 and 80, and I thought his classes were wonderful. He was very, very irreverent. He'd go off on tangents, and he mentioned casually that he was a fan of the Detroit Tigers, and I was a big baseball fan, so I thought, I've got to get to know this guy. So I went to his office hours, and we would shoot the shit and all that stuff about all kinds of stuff, philosophy being probably low on that list. But we got to know each other after I graduated, stayed in touch a little bit, but then lost touch. But in 2001, I went back to New York for the first year of IPO Festival. Got back in touch with him. We hung out at his place for a bit. It was a really nice reunion. But I was recently thinking about him and looked him up on Facebook. Couldn't find him there, but in the course of my investigation, I did find out about the documentary that has been done on him. I found out that over the years, his renown just continued to grow, and he certainly is worthy of that documentary. Do we have the cover of it, Pandy?
Yes, we do. I got the cover right here. It is called Bronx Socrates, The Extraordinary Legacy of Professor Bob Gurland. Look at that.
And there he is, picture probably from maybe the late 70s, early 80s, holding a trumpet, because that was his other vocation for a bit. Early on, he was a jazz trumpeter player. Playing for people like Gene Krupa and Lionel Hampton. Holy crap, right? Isn't my thing. I certainly appreciate anybody who can display that sort of talent. But yeah, he's a true Renaissance man, and I cannot wait to bring him on. And with him tonight is the documentarian, who also was a student of his, and probably felt even more strongly about him than I did, because ultimately he has become a professor of philosophy at NYU as well. So this is just going to be so much fun. So without further ado, would you please give a huge welcome to documentarian Joseph DiSalvo and Professor Robert Gurland.
And there they are.
Hello, gentlemen.
Holy cow!
Both of you.
Let's not talk about philosophy tonight. Let's just talk about your trumpet playing and Gene Krupa and Lionel Hampton. Mike, I mean, just right there, when I read that in your bio, I was like, holy cow, this guy's not just your average trumpet player.
Well, Mark, before we do that, I have to ask, as you guys are philosophy professors, you got to let me know, does this documentary actually exist?
Well, that's a good question.
For you, not until you see it, David. And you have, so you do know that it exists.
Okay, there you go.
And
it does.
And if it does exist and we do see it, it really is just our perspective as to whether we did see it and it does exist. So
I mean, you guys have all the answers to all the big questions already. What are we doing here?
What a great question. What a great question. That's well, I'm gonna let David start off with a little bit of he and Bob time here, because he probably wants to talk a little bit about
the question about his jazz trumpet playing was great. So let's start with that.
Let's go all the way back. Bob, how did you get, number one, how did you get into playing the trumpet? Did you start young? Did you have lessons early? Did you have family that played music?
Well, it's in the genealogy for sure. That is, I didn't hit my stride as a player until I was about 14 or 15.
Wow.
And I had, I don't think that when I left music, I didn't think that the music world had suffered a great loss. I was a good mechanic. I could play, I could sight read, and it was a great thing to do, and I miss it, as I can no longer manage the trumpet. So I miss it very much. But hey, I had the experience, and it was exhilarating.
And how did you get hooked up with someone like Gene Krupa? How did that come in?
I didn't. What happened? I used to hang out at NOLA Studios in New York, and we would hang out with other musicians. And he had a pickup band he was putting together in New York. He wasn't using his regulars, and he said, "I need a lead trumpeter." And a guy there said, "You ought to go hear this guy." And he came in and he had me sight read one of his things, and he listened to my sound, and he said, "Hey, I think I'll use you." And he did. Only though in New York when he was doing gigs in New York City. But it was great fun to do it. And
did you know at the time, Bob? Like, were you a little starstruck? Was Gene Krupa's name like send little shivers down?
Well, I knew his stuff very well. I mean, he was Benny Goodman's drummer,
right?
And I would often go to jazz at the Philharmonic, and they would have a battle of the drummers, and he and Buddy Rich would would face off, so to speak.
Wow.
And it was very exciting to hear them and to actually watch them, because they were physically dynamic and fun to watch. And so that, yes, I knew of them. And Hamper, that was also a kind of serendipitous experience, because he also had a drug problem for a while, and it got out of, he was in Louisville and came to New York, and the guy who put the band together for Krupa put a band together for Hampton, and I played a bunch of the New York City gigs that he had. In other words, very often the recording band was not the same band that played in the various cities. And they had connections so that they'd come, and we'd sit in for about a couple of hours and rehearse, and we'd play all the gigs. It was fun. It was
I'll tell you what, David.
I played a lot of Latin work, because when I was of age, when I was in my early 20s, Latin was the rage. And I had a few gigs with Tito Puente and Noro and S.A. Morales, and it was I had a knack for that Latin. I must have somewhere back in the in my rather ancient history, a root that emerges from some Latin American country.
I think what I was going to say, David, this is episode number 197. We've interviewed a lot of musicians, a lot of players from the 60s into the early 70s, especially. I think Bob probably takes the cake as far as who he's played with as far back as those classics.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone else was.
I was playing essentially in the 50s, the early 50s.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
amazing.
so I was going to say,
which is a trick, given I'm only 30 years old.
It's amazing how that works,
Given everything else you've done, I'm not surprised that you could pull that off. But
by the way, if I could just add to this, because there's a certain sense of the humility of Bob Gurland in recent time, to suggest that it wasn't a loss to music when he left music to become a teacher. I always laugh at the become a teacher line, but there's a joke, and this all came out when I was sort of doing the research for the film and getting into the professorial experiences that sort of were the prologue to this. But there's this great line that Lionel Hampton had about Bob, and it said, listen, that he's the best sight reader I've ever seen. If a fly lands on the page, Gurland can play it. Which, I mean, okay, that seems to be the highest technical compliment that anybody can get.
Well, yeah, you have to play it because it would be above the notes. So
yeah, it's one of those things. So I chuckle, I chuckle at the humility sometimes. But
I love that. I got to remember that one.
Sight reading was a marketable skill, because if musicians came and they put a band together, you didn't have much time to rehearse. You had to sit down and play that. They put the chart in front of you, and you had to play it, and so that it was a skill was marketable. My son, who's a very fine saxophonist, has the same kind of talent, only he has a very good jazz sensibility as well.
Amazing.
Bob, did you have aspirations to be a teacher or a professor prior to the trumpet playing?
Well, I understood that I had certain limitations that would never allow me to reach a level in the jazz world that I would have aspired to. And it came to me when I was young, and I decided that it was not for me. My heart was there, but I understood that I was able to understand what my limitations were, and I ended up, I wanted to teach. I thought I could teach, that I could do this and make the school experience something vibrant and vital for young people. And I decided that I would go for teaching, and I'm not sorry I did. It was an irony not lost on my mother, who took me to school at gunpoint, because it wasn't. She would have never believed, nor would I, that I would spend over 60 years of my life in a classroom environment.
And you just retired about, 6 years ago? 2019?
Correct.
Yeah, 2019.
And I think we're at liberty to say that you are 91 right now, correct?
Yes, I am 91.
So do the math, everybody. He's taught for quite a long time. Holy cow.
And he has the honor of being our eldest guest on Material Issues, just beating out my dad, who was a guest of ours when he was 90. And he's lived quite a fascinating life as well. So it wasn't just nepotism that got him on the show. But anyway,
but he did beg pretty hard, though. So I got
right.
That's amazing. At what point, when you're playing music, Bob, you decided to go to school as far as teaching, to get your teaching certificate, or you get your degree in education? Where did you go to school?
Well, I was as an undergraduate. I went to City College of New York,
Okay.
and then upon graduation, I ended up taking courses at Delphi and Columbia, and I went eventually got my PhD in philosophy at New York University. But I taught. I taught at every level. That is, my first introduction to teaching was at elementary level. I taught fifth and sixth grade. And then I taught in the Roslyn, Long Island School District. I taught junior high and senior high. And then I went on to teach at the university. So I taught every level from elementary school, fifth grade, on through graduate school. And so I had the opportunity to teach young people at every level of their development. And I learned a lot from teaching at elementary school. You had to, besides putting on galoshes for kids and getting them on the bus, I also had to learn how to communicate. And I learned so much about young people who are capable of doing so much more intellectually than we expect of them.
Yeah. Oh.
As a matter of fact, when I taught the fifth grade, I taught George Orwell's Animal Farm, they read. And I met someone that I actually had in the fifth grade. And he came over and he saw me and he shook my hand and he said, "Some pigs are more equal than others." And I know, which was a line from Animal Farm. And he remembered the fact that he had that experience with me in the fifth grade.
And I imagine that must still happen quite a bit. You must hear from students, maybe not your grade school students, but certainly your college students.
Well, one of my grades, you would like this as a baseball fan, one of my students that I had in the fifth grade, who became a friend, I boarded with his family. I gave him my Topps original 1941 baseball cards. He went to college and he pasted them on his dormitory wall as wallpaper. So somewhere in a Florida school, the wall is covered with baseball cards. I can still see the Ted Williams card that I had. And they adorn the walls of a dormitory in a Florida college.
You know how many great cards I stuck in the spokes of my bicycle in the late 60s?
Stop it.
Well, we used to flip them. We we had ways of if you won the hand and we pitched against the wall. We had several ways of somehow taking over another kid's collection, because if you beat him at the game, you get the cards.
Yeah, I did that too. In fact, I paid my way through college flipping cards.
But they become dog-eared, and then they don't lose their value.
You end up destroying the very assets you've won. It's crazy.
That is true. Indeed. But I was an amazing flipper of getting it closest to the door, and I did win a lot of people's cards.
They called him Flipper. No, forget it.
So I see that one of your mentors at NYU was Professor William Barrett, who I had the pleasure of having as a student. I thought he was my second favorite professor at NYU.
He was my first.
Yeah,
I was a student of Barrett, and we were very close. And when he was facing death, he asked his daughter that he said that he wanted me to be his eulogist, and that I was the only one to speak at his funeral. I had a very tight relationship with him, and he impacted. He was a role model of a sort for me, and I did love him.
Yeah, no, he was wonderful. Yeah, I mean, every time I was in his class, I got into a better mood just because of his demeanor. He was great.
Yes, Yes, he looked like a college. He was someone you would imagine being
Yeah.
a college professor. He was a very large man. He was a big guy. He was 6'5". And when I eulogized him, I mentioned that God gave him that big frame to house such a big intellect. It was necessary.
Well, then how do
Now,
you
as a
how do you explain your intellect and your frame?
I don't know. It's hard to explain. I did not come out of a family. I was first generation. My father was an electrician, worked in New York for an electrical contractor. And came over when he was 12 or 13 years old from Lithuania and had very little schooling and had a kind of contempt for book learning. Uh, he believed in work at the hands, working with your hands. And my mother did come over as a very young child, and she did have a high school education and very, very insistent that I do very well. And very, she was very driven. She wasn't driven. She drove me. And that was the name of the game. And if I got a 99, she wanted to know who the hell got the other point and why did I let him have it. So,
well, do you think that your father's semi disdain for the academia world as opposed to hands and labor maybe drove you harder to be higher educated and do what you did?
He absented himself from my educational life. He said it was my mother's job. That was woman's work to oversee the education of the kids. And he did not engage me in any way with regard to school. He would sometimes say to my mother, "Is he doing all right in school? Do you want me to do something about it?" Et cetera, et cetera. He thought that but he had a certain incredible intelligence, and I knew that. And whatever I have intellectually, the capacity to grow in that direction was somehow inherited from him, even though I never saw him read a book.
Right.
Now, you talked about doing the eulogy for your former professor. It made me think of my dad, who was a professor of guidance and psychology at Kutztown.
Oh.
And I remember when I got married, my dad stood up and said, "Never hand the mic to a professor of guidance psychology used to talking or lecturing for 2 hours." Is it the same way with handing a mic to a philosophy professor? Is it a very dangerous thing?
In his case, I can tell you absolutely.
You're in the middle of it now, Mark. You're in the middle of it now. What do you think?
I don't know.
Well,
I don't know what my eulogy will be, but I had a joke about it. I said, "Here lies Bob Gurland. He never ran out of bullshit. He just ran out of time."
You made me think of my dad. My dad made it to almost 95, and that was just one of the things I always remember him saying. Don't hand the microphone.
It's a nice
That's
number.
the thing about time you mentioned. I saw the documentary, and you equated time and love. But one of the things you said when you were my professor was that time is your most valuable currency, and I never forgot that. And I try to live my life that way, even though I do waste a lot of it. I realize the importance of it, and that, of course, you never know when your time is going to run out.
Well, I use an analogy for my students. I bring in a bucket with marbles, and I say, "You think of that each marble is a unit of time in your life. Now, you don't know how many marbles you got in that bucket, but you know every day, every minute that you're dealing, a marble is being tossed out of that bucket, and you have to make the most of it. It is the most valuable commodity you have. You don't know how much you have, but it's a great gift when others give their time to you and it's a gift from the heart when you give your time to them.
And I did learn that from you as well, and I applied it in my real life because I got my master's in cognitive psychology, and I taught entry-level psychology at community college for about 7 years. And like you, although hardly at your level, I did teach people in the military. I taught, one of my jobs is teaching Marines at Camp Pendleton. So, which was a totally different experience from anything else. But that's why when I saw that you had actually gone up to West Point and taught cadets there, I was especially fascinated. What was that experience like vis-a-vis teaching college students?
Well, it was a very interesting experience because it transformed my thinking about the military and about the young men who aspired to somehow dedicate their lives to the military. And I found them very engaging, and they were very appreciative of me as they appreciated what I was doing there. I was brought there to rework a program in ethics and professionalism for the military. And it became a model. I taught their faculty how to teach the course that I created. And I taught I taught the cadets as well. In other words, I taught the faculty to teach the class. I created the class, and I taught the cadets. I lived at the academy. I used to work out with the baseball team, and I had a wonderful experience. And at the end of the year, they wanted me to stay for another year, which I did. But then they offered me a full-time tenured position as the first civilian to teach it, to become part of the faculty at the academy. But I turned it down to go back to NYU.
Yeah,
I'm a New York City boy, and I wanted to. It's interesting. The cadets themselves said to me, well, once you become part of the system, you will be co-opted and you won't be appreciated in the same way as you were as being a visitor. And I thought that was very interesting. And I took that very seriously because once in other words, they responded to me differently because I wasn't in the military and I didn't walk into class wearing a uniform.
Yeah.
And so they could confide in me in ways that they didn't confide in people who were part of the military system.
I had the same experience with my students. And in fact, one thing I'll never forget, I'll be brief about this, was I was teaching a class at Camp Pendleton in 1991. And that happened to be the day, one of the days was the day that the students, the military students, were called to go to the Gulf, and you could just see how frightened they were. They had no idea whether or not they were going to come back. And one of them actually went up to me and he said, "Look, I don't want to shirk my responsibility. I want to finish this work. Can you give me an assignment?" I said, "No, please. You have more important things to worry about." It took me about 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes, to talk him out of taking that responsibility, which I'll never forget that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that in World War II, citizen soldiers carried the burden and carried it damn well.
Yeah. Oh my God, did they ever? I wasn't there, but I know. Well, Bob, you are a very, very unique man, but in one particular respect, you're not unique, and that brings me to talk about the surprise guest we have today. Bob Gurland, this is your life. We've got a gentleman who I met through Facebook. Found out that he was a member of a band in the early 60s called Even Dozen Jug Band, which actually had some very talented people in it, like John Sebastian of the Lovin' Spoonful, Maria Muldaur, who had a top 10 hit on Billboard, and several others. But and he played like you. He played trumpet. Only in his case, it was mouth trumpet. So he would be making trumpet sounds doing this.
There's another guy. There's a Bob Gurland who plays.
Well, as a matter, he's laughing right now. As a matter of fact, I know that you guys have spoken before, so I thought it would be apropos to bring this gentleman up and be part of this show. So would you please give a huge Material Issues welcome to the other Bob Gurland?
Hello. What happened? Look,
my students would try to contact me.
That's right.
They would call him, and they'd end up with him, not me, and they'd ask him for extensions.
Exactly.
And I said, sure, why not?
Take a couple of weeks, no problem. And I'd say, no, I'm not the right Bob Gurland. I said, but here, I can't give out his phone number to you, but give me your number. I'll call him and let you know he called. But no, I'm not giving you the extension.
I thought it was a bridge too far. It was a bridge too far when you started sending tuition bills, though. I think that was officially where you crossed over in terms of unethical behavior.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
I got to tell you something. Do you know Bob Gurland?
Yes.
That my wife was at the boat.
Oh, that's another. Oh, then tell the funny. Here's the story. So my wife, Gaby, come on. Here's Gaby.
Hi.
We are getting married on a boat called the Petrel.
The Petrel
holds 37 people before we have a ceremony and so forth. And we're getting on the boat. So we actually got officially. It's a long story, but the guy my wife, who was a partner in a law firm, her close friend was the head of the New York bankruptcy court, and she wanted him to marry us. And he said, you know what? I don't think I can because I'm a federal judge and marriage is a state institution. So anyway, so we decided we still want to do it. So we had this little boat that we hired to go out to Statue of Liberty. We get to the boat, and it's written down, marriage of Bob Gurland, and this woman comes up, and she's in shock. What? What? Let me say, what are you talking about? What's about? I said, Bob Gurland, that's my boyfriend.
A boyfriend?
He's getting married to somebody else?
Oh, wow.
We said, well, that must be another Bob Gurland because I'm not that Bob Gurland.
Well, I'll tell you, over the last couple of weeks, David and I have had this conversation with a particular guest as to that is and is not Bob Gurland. I don't know, David, if you were going to get into how this happened and why this is happening, but there might be people watching going, what is going on?
I'll explain it briefly. So when I looked for Philosphy Bob, we'll call him for these purposes, on Facebook and didn't find him, I did find a post by a gentleman named Steve Katz, whose name I recognize because he was the founding member of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, among other things. And he posted about Even Dozen Jug Band. He posted a video which I saw, and I said, wow. So I'm good. I said, I know, my Bob Gurland is a trumpet player. So was he in this band? I got to see this video. So I'm looking at the video. But this Bob Gurland is playing hand trumpet, so he's got his hands over his face. I can't tell. I think, well, they're both small, they're both wiry, they're both named Bob. It's got to be him. But I never did find out through that way. So we have Steve Katz as a guest on Material Issues. And, throughout the course of the interview, I finally bring up the other Bob, and Mark puts up the cover of the documentary, and he takes one look at it and he says, that's not him. I said, what are you talking about? It's not him. My philosophy professor, he was a trumpet player. He's from New York. How could it not be him? He said, I'm telling you, it's not him. And I was in shock. I was literally freaking out during this episode.
David, can I just add something? Because
Yeah,
obviously I watched the episode as we were getting ready for this, and I saw that you and the cat's conversation, and the moment at which you guys are talking and celebrating hand trumpet Bob Gurland and his contributions, and the fact that Cat still plays with him on occasion, and it was this entire dialogue, and then all of a sudden the movie poster pops up, and Katz looks at it and goes, "That's not Bob Gurland." And you were like, "No, Washington Square Park, trumpet, teaches philosophy," and Katz was like, "You said he teaches philosophy. My Bob Gurland doesn't teach philosophy." It was literally Who's on First comedy at the highest level. And I, when you told me about this, I had known about the circular nature of reaching out to one, getting the other, and all that stuff. So it was absolutely hilarious. And then to watch it play out in real time, and obviously you and I have had this conversation about this, it was hilarious. But one of the amazing things is, mouth trumpet Bob Gurland, it is great to finally meet you. But when I was doing the research for the film, there was this effort to try to get as much publicly available footage of philosophy professor Bob Gurland, both from both the NYU as an institution and whatever was out there. But when you search for Bob Gurland, even Washington Square Park, it is all this footage of this brilliant hand trumpeter entertaining. Like it's infinite, and there's so little of philosophy professor Bob. And there was a moment in my mind, I'm like, this is good film stuff. Do we try to get this? So I love that we're now having this realization, sort of even in the ether. It's great stuff.
Oh, Lord Almighty!
Here's another one.
To be fair, though, I did tell Steve Katz immediately that Bob was my philosophy professor. He obviously glossed completely over that.
I mentioned Keith because Bob, the other Bob.
Because Gabe and Keith, we have a house upstate, and I've played with Bob's son Keith and baby. So it's there's Keith Gurland. Completing the circle, the Gurland circle.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. This is how this is played out. This is
my son said he had met you. I said I would look forward to the time that I could meet him, and now I at least can.
In a virtual world, everybody's on the same page. It's wonderful.
Unbelievable. And the fact that you'll forever now be known as mouth trumpet Bob Gurland is even
there are worse things. There are worse things.
The other Bob, your mouth trumpet Bob.
It's funny. I generally now, when I'm doing albums, I call it vocal trumpet. Because on our first album, we called, and in fact, on our first album, John Sebastian didn't want to use his real name because he was in the union and wasn't supposed to, so he called himself John Benson on there. So I'm pretty much known as vocal because what I do is a vocal thing. I took Bobby McFerrin's place in John Hendricks' band, and it's but it's interesting how you then learn other people who do vocal type things with different sounds, different whatever. But,
so you're doing something with your chords and muting it. Oh
my God!
And then you can just sing or talk and do whatever you want.
Oh, Lord Almighty! I'm just going to jump off the bridge now. I've seen it all. That's fantastic. That is
I
wonderful.
would like to submit that this is the greatest episode of Material Issues that's ever come together.
The guy's got pretty good range.
The funny thing is, I've had a chance to play with people who I'm sure I would have never if I was just a good trumpet player. But when I went out, I went out on the road with John Hendricks, Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross. For those of you who are not jazz folks,
Wow.
When I was a kid growing up, Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross, this great jazz trio, was one of the top groups. And actually, the day I met John Hendricks, my buddy who I went to Columbia with, got a kid named David Bromberg, who had a bunch of albums on Columbia.
Wow.
He was Bob Dylan's guitar player when Dylan was going out on the road and needed a good guitar. I mean, obviously, Bob Dylan plays guitar, but he wanted a really good guitar. So Bromberg says one day, Bob, I want to introduce you to Dylan and have him hear your trumpet. So we're backstage at the bitter end, and I'm playing with Bob Dylan, and this guy next to me is doing this vocal bass. I look and I listen. I said, "Wow, this guy really knows his notes are great." And I looked, and it was John Hendricks, who I recognized. Like, oh my goodness! And then in my mind, I thought for a second, well, that's just Bob Dylan. He needs an instrument, but John and I. So we excused ourselves from Bob Dylan. And we went in the corner and we started playing. And he said, well, we're doing the show out in California at this place called Monterey, if you want to come. And I said, oh, no, John, I've been pounding the pavement. I just got out of law school. I said, I just got this job as a lawyer. And then I represented Atlantic, Warner Brothers, whatever. So I said, but good luck with your Monterey festival. I hope it all works out. Years later, John Hendricks is back in town, and I called. I found out. I said, I don't know if you remember, but I'm that guy who was doing this thing. He was playing at the bitter end. I said, I'd love to come. He said, oh, come on up on stage. So he'd call me up, and every time he would come to town, I would play. And then one day, I get this phone call, and he said, do you want to be in the band? Because he had, by that time, started another band called John Hendricks and Company. I said, it was like, yes, not how much does it pay, not when are we going out. Anyway, we go, I joined, we go out on the road. I say, so John, what are we doing next week? He said, well, Tuesday we're playing with Sarah Vaughan, and then Thursday we're playing Carmen McRae, and on the weekend we'll be up in Vancouver, we're playing with Ella. And I'm like, okay. Oh. I've had a chance to share the stage with Ella Fitzgerald. Oh, then he said, and then the next week we're playing with Dizzy. So then I got to play with Dizzy. When you're on stage, when you're playing with Dizzy Gillespie and you don't have a trumpet, you got to have something else. So,
oh my God.
Because that's the thing, the act goes, lasts for a few seconds, the look ma no hands thing. But
amazing.
Hey, Bob, are you still in New York?
Yeah.
Oh, we got to get you guys to. I mean, this has to happen. It's not even. In fact, if the film does make Tribeca, we may have you open up with like a musical tribute before the thing screens. Let's just run this thing as far as we can. I mean, let's go with it.
And the combination.
And I'll be there.
Our daughter, who's downstairs, is an NYU Tisch NYU film, and I said, I got to put you together with Joe. There's just so many connections.
100%.
Now a young filmmaker doing great stuff. And we live right next to where the Tribeca Festival is. We're all down in Tribeca. So, yes, we should connect.
There is you have my absolute ironclad commitment that the three of us and Mark, if he wants to come in from South Jersey, because I know that's literally like coming in from another country sometimes.
It is coming.
When is this, Joe?
We'll find out in the next couple of weeks, and the festival is June 5th through the 14th. So
the whole submission.
I'm going to be in Europe the whole time with my festival. Damn!
I mean, just getting into Tribeca is tough. That's a tough road. I mean, I know only because the film that I starred in is right there, and it's in the loop as well. So
what I would say, which is how I've been touting this, is if Bob De Niro's Tribeca Film Festival, which is a festival for New Yorkers by New Yorkers and supposed to be about New Yorkers, if they're not inspired by the story of a Bronx professor and a Queens student who meet on a Manhattan campus and wind up teaching at the same time in that institution, I don't know what the thing stands for. So I'm fingers crossed.
De Niro's been in our house because we live literally next door to the Greenwich Hotel that he built after 9/11.
Oh, wow.
So there's connection there with
Tim Allen brought up a great point. He's sensing another Bob Gurland documentary, the mouth trumpet documentary.
Yeah, I mean, or just identical twins, unrelated. I mean, it's just there's a wonderful
separated at birth.
Yeah.
My daughter is in the process of doing what they call the Bob doc, which is a documentary on me, and has been in touch with a lot of the people that I've performed with. And
this is awesome.
You get a kick out of this. When I became lawyer Bob Gurland for a while, I couldn't get a job for a while. And my sister's in a hospital in Brooklyn. She's talking to this guy. He says, "Oh, my son is an entertainment lawyer." I said, "Oh, my brother's looking for a job." She said, "Oh, okay." Puts the two of us together. He is what? Anyway,
like, don't say anymore.
I was thinking we should have you as a guest. We're going to have you as a guest on Material Issues because you've lived a very interesting life yourself.
Well, but the thing too is, I got to tell you from the other side, so many people have told me about the great Bob Gurland, and in fact, our kids went to NYU, and at one point, I wanted to be in because Bob's reputation about how he was so giving, and the thing about at the end of the course, if you haven't changed, I get an F. Whatever, I don't know if I saw that in the and I at one point I had contacted him and I said, because I said, "Oh, his classes are he's so popular, it's hard to get in." And Bob had actually said to me somehow, he had said, "Oh, if you had told me that, I'd have got her in the class." But so many people I've met have admired your teaching ability so much.
Oh yeah,
it's just an honor to be on this show. Acknowledging you.
Well, it's wonderful to meet you. And I've heard a lot about you, and people, even my wife, who said, I kind of married this. I went to this guy's wedding, and she said, "Who's getting married?" She said, "Bob Gurland." She said, "I just left him at the house." She said, it was fun. Well, hey.
I think that's a great idea, though, David. We should have Bob Gurland, other Bob Gurland, on the show. Mouth trumpet Bob on the show. I'd love to continue a more in-depth conversation with you, Bob too. Boy, I'm getting confused with who I'm talking to here. This is great. I think it would be wonderful. I think it's a great idea. Yeah, thank you.
Love it.
And I'm going to outreach to put the three of us together and start that episode with some B-roll of us having really good food in Tribeca. So let's make that happen, because this is absolutely, the energy here is magical. It's really
wonderful. Yeah,
all right. In the world of just crazy, you saying father coming from Lithuania. My father came from Lithuania, and a lot of times when they'd come over on the boat, whatever, they would just have. So my father came from an area called Gurland. And they would often, the immigration people, it's like, Chaim from Gurland, Chaim Gurland. And it's interesting. I don't know where in Lithuania your family is from, but I wouldn't be surprised if we were near Vilna.
He came from Kaunas, close to Kovno.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, came over in steerage on an ocean liner. I think it was the Hamburg or the Bremen, one of the German boats. He walked to Germany from Lithuania. He said, and he carried his shoes tied by the shoelace around his neck because he didn't want to wear out his shoes.
Wow.
Whatever.
Amazing.
Wow. Nowadays, you don't let your kid cross the street
unsupervised.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Holy
cow.
But just, it's about you, this program. I just
now what a pleasure, Bob, to have you pop in here and,
really was.
And do this surprise and turn it into what it has turned into. This is some of the best moments of the last 4 years of this program. It's been right here. It's been great.
And this guy, Mr. Bash, I'm surprised that I passed him, a Yankee fan. I had this down on the Yankees. They won all the time. It was boring. Yankee fans think that the World Series is an entitlement. And if they don't win it, the season is,
I know.
down the drawn.
This is a guy born and raised in the Bronx. We have to
I know.
unpack that as well. Let's spend some time on this.
I lived in Hank Greenberg lived in my neighborhood,
There you go.
and he was my hero. And as my sister said, and he hits home runs. She says, not a typical Jewish baseball player. Typical baseball player lays down a bunt, gets to first base, steals second, and then sells it. Well, whatever.
Yeah, most of them hit like Mo Berg, actually. Well, this line has been attributed to several people, but accordingly, one of them is Babe Ruth, who said, "Yeah, Mo Berg speaks 12 languages, but he can't hit in any of them."
Well,
Oh Lord! Oh Lord!
but I became a Tiger fan, and I cannot. My allegiance is unwavering. I don't expect much for them this year, but that's what's nice about it. You don't expect much for them, so when they deliver something once in a while, it's very exciting.
That is special.
Are you able to watch all the Tiger games? Do you have the
Yeah, of
baseball?
course,
package?
I have MLB TV or whatever, and I watch all the Tiger games. It's
Excellent.
It helps pass the days,
Sure.
and it's wonderful. Your baseball to me is the game, the quintessential American game for all kinds of reasons,
No doubt.
which won't go into now.
Agreed.
Bob,
Well,
I have to tell you, I'm sorry, Mark. I have to tell
Good.
you about the first time we met, and this is what you had brought up before the show. Can I use any kind of language? Well, now it's going to actually become apropos. I had just in case this gentleman were to watch a show, we'll say that his name starts with a U and it has 5 letters. Well, he was my first philosophy professor at NYU. And I had some issue with him about a grade he gave me. And I went up to him and I said, I think I deserve better. And he didn't agree. So I was pissed off. I went over to the philosophy department, and the secretary said, well, you need to talk to Professor Gurland. He's the chair. So I went in, and that was the first time I'd ever met you. I did notice the music-related pictures and baseball pictures on the wall, so I felt very at ease. So I told you about the issue that I had with this professor, and you said, and I quote, "Well, he can be a real jerk off sometimes." and I thought, I don't care what happens. I have to take this man's classes. He's my kind of guy.
Oh, wonderful. Oh.
That's how it started.
Really nice. Well, I just want to say, mouth trumpet Bob, you are more than welcome to hang out. We want to get into talking a little bit more about the actual documentary coming out. But if you feel like hanging out, you're welcome. We'd love to have you on in the future episode of Material Issues. But if you need to run, absolutely fine too. I just want to say thank you for making this a wonderful experience.
And it was great to see you. I appreciate
Great to
that.
see you, and thank you for thinking of having me and giving me the honor to share with the other Bob Gurland.
Bob, I'll be in touch. I will be in touch for 100%.
Absolutely. Well, he's got my number.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll be in touch as well, Bob.
Great, everybody. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Bob.
So much.
Thank you, Bob. What a pleasure. Oh, there you go. That was amazing.
Well done.
No,
That was
Joe,
fantastic.
yeah, it really was. So Joe, obviously you had Bob as a professor. You obviously felt very similar to a lot of his students, but what compelled you to do this documentary?
So, so to start it with the history of Bob and I as mentor, mentee, and friends, and really just sort of beyond that, just becoming almost family. Of the 44 credits that I took at NYU to graduate with my philosophy degree, fully 34 of them were classes or independent studies. I majored in
Wow.
I majored in Bob Gurland. Like for me, when I went to NYU, you know, a similar story of the commuter school experience at the time. I am first generation everything, right? First to be born in the country, first to graduate high school, go to college, law school, first to practice anything. My family, nobody practiced, they worked. They didn't even understand what the concept was, right?
Yeah.
So when I went to NYU, it was to fill this, you know, smart kids are one of three things. You're a doctor, a dentist, or a lawyer. And for me, that was lawyer. I mean, I wasn't going to do the stuff. It was, so when I went, it was going to be political science and go to law school. And my first experience on campus as a student was this sample introduction to philosophy class, which incoming students were invited to with their parents or guardians. So I am sitting in the auditorium between my parents and looking around and scared shitless, right? Because this first generation kid from Queens with the heavy New York accent is in a room filled with very polished kids and their parents who just look like they're ready for college infinitely more than I didn't even know what that meant, right? And in walks Bob Gurland, who starts running the room with this Bronx accent and just, I mean, sounds like he's just firing these ideas out through a horn, right? And there's probably 450, 500 people in the room. And I would have sworn that he was talking only to me. And everything just started to make sense. And I said, all right, I can do this. I want to do that. B, I can do this. And my mother just looked over to me. She's like, you're going to love it here. And she got it. Like, so that connection was immediate. It was direct. It was deep. And it was real. So in college for me was spending as much time with Bob Gurland as possible. And we stayed. He was a guest at my wedding. He came to the hospital when my kids were born. Like he's been family for forever at the deepest, most important level. And then as my career as a lawyer and an investor and sort of somebody in business rolled forward and just became what it ultimately became, I was guest lecturing in Bob's classes for a period of time because he was teaching at the business school. So his last class for 4 or 5 years would be me coming in, and he had this great introduction of, because I don't want any of the blame of the students who turn out lousy. I'm not taking any credit for the ones that succeed, but here's Joe DiSalvo and it was this great thing. And I loved it. I always wanted to be in a classroom. It was great. And eventually the same program in which Bob was teaching at the business school offered me an opportunity to teach the same course, professional responsibility and leadership. And in December of 2019, when Bob announced his retirement, I was teaching the same course at the same school at the same time as Bob Gurland.
This is what's called passing the torch. And it was very exciting for me, given that I feel so powerful feelings towards him, towards Mr. DiSalvo. I joke about it. I say I sometimes majored in producing Italian lawyers, but this guy was at the top of the pinnacle, and at the pinnacle of the whole group of guys that I taught. And I'm so proud of him. He is so damn good. And it's just heart-filling to be in his presence when he was in the classroom and saw how competent and how warm and how engaging he is. So
I had the best teacher. So that's that. There's that.
It's a mutual.
When I'm in the classroom, it's an echo of this guy. That's just the reality of it. So, but I love it. I mean, it's literally the best thing going. So in 2019, in fall of 2019, when my first semester teaching is now Bob's last semester teaching, and because I'm a faculty member, I am having these wonderful conversations with the school. And there's this tremendous groundswell of support that Bob Gurland, after 65 years teaching, 50 at NYU, we are going to celebrate his legacy and his experience and his impact on the world, right? We're scholarship, we're going to do a party, or we're going to give me somebody from Tisch, and we're going to do a film. It's all of this great stuff. And then COVID happens, right? Yeah. So now I mean, it is lockdown, shut down. Absolutely nobody show up, nobody do anything. Like the universities were at the leading edge of we're going to do everything remote and shut it down. And that was torture, right? Because for me, life goes on. You figure out a way to go it. But in this wonderful, soul here, you have somebody that goes from 60 years of sort of at the center of campus and university life as a public intellectual to being trapped in a 2-bedroom apartment, while the pandemic is raging. It's just, there's a piece of you that just dies watching that happen, and to go through it, it was nuts. So when the when the restrictions were lifted, I reached out to the university to say, hey, listen, remember those great plans about the documentary and the party and the foundation and all that stuff? And there was nothing. There was no institutional memory, no commitment, no ability to generate any kind of momentum about these grand plans at all. And that, to be perfectly honest, just absolutely infuriated me.
Sure.
like the notion that Bob Gurland was going to retire and there was not going to be any recognition or acknowledgement or celebration of this legacy, I couldn't abide by that. So I created a production company and found a film crew and went about the first time going through, creating a documentary and creating a film, which helped me survive the pandemic, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
And was the most gratifying, rewarding experience of my adult life of professional and creative energy, because the more people that you reach out to talk about Bob Gurland, the more people get excited and grateful and present this unbelievable degree of appreciation to share the impact he's had on their life, which is, I mean, to me, that's a blessing, right? If you have the opportunity to be part of that and to be a conduit of that energy to create something that's going to be lasting, what else could you possibly want to spend your time on? So, I got into the film. I interviewed, I can't even remember. I mean, it's probably 36 hours of footage of talking about Bob. I put out a blast to a bunch of former students to put their own video tributes that we did at the thing. And, the film was created and it was a wonderful celebration. I mean, we basically screened it in April of 2022 for friends and family in Brooklyn, and it was well received. I finally got the university to buy in, and they screened it on campus for the Alumni Association on his 89th birthday, and we threw a party. Like, eventually even the university buys in. And then I just parked it on the website and said, listen, I'm not going to look to exploit this commercially or put it out there. I want it to be a conduit for students to connect with Bob. So it was on the website. It was my version of this thing, which was this very sort of rudimentary film. And then it gets discovered by an independent studio in Los Angeles that is so moved, called Pollock Films. And they are so moved by it. They said, listen, with your permission, we want to re-edit this, recut this. We want new footage. We want to make this a real film that plays in the documentary space. And I could not have been more excited. We went out and we hired a jazz quartet and scored original music. I brought Bob back on campus and we recorded him in his 5th year of retirement, doing stuff on so it became something completely new. And the studio is now, we have it submitted to the festival circuit. We screened it in Beverly Hills on March 7th, which David attended. And that was so well received that the outpouring that I've gotten from the film industry that was there has been, hey, let me see your other work. Well, funny story. This is the first thing. There's no other work. People are asking about who we worked with, and who did I work with? I work with a kid in Queens who does this. Like it's an amazing thing, and it has now become even more than I ever expected, right? Because people are talking about it as, listen, in this moment in this moment of chaos and insanity, where the federal government has apparently come to the conclusion that there's no national interest in educating its citizenry, a story about the great potential and impact of a professor who says, I want to make the lives of my students better. I want to teach them how to ask the questions, not memorize the answers. That has real value. And from my standpoint, there's no better version of the world to tell that story than through Bob Gurland's impact on the world. I mean, the numbers are preposterous. It's 65 years. It's 25,000 students. It's thousands of letters and emails coming back of people who decades later remember a thing that he said that helped them live a better life.
You can add one to that.
Yeah, it's you are student 11,462. I checked the rest.
I was wondering if you had that number. Yeah.
Now I was really going for 11,461.
I mean, you missed out. It's that girl in front of you with the sandals. She's the one.
And while we've been on air, we've heard from 7 other Bob Gurlands.
They all have a unique skill. So
they all play trumpet.
The dads are all from Lithuania.
Two of them play trumpet with their feet. It's a wild thing. Like, it's this crazy thing. But so that's the story of the film. And now that we're in it, and that it's being released and promoted by an independent film studio, and we're waiting to hear back from these festivals, it is now taking on a life that I couldn't have even imagined when we did it, right? Because to talk about a universe of 25,000 people and their influence and their network of people, that's already a meaningful way to celebrate this. Yeah. But to have it be out there and inspire people who are not connected to Bob or me or NYU, and for them to get out of it what they are, that's, like I said, it's a blessing. I mean, it's really a gift from the universe back to me to be able to be a conduit to receive all the great energy that this guy has created in the world. Yeah. Who's luckier than I am? You know, I remember when we screened it in Brooklyn, I always tell the story. It was for friends and family. I think we had probably about 105, 110 people in this theater, in the Alamo Cinema House in Brooklyn. And one of my dearest friends was there with her husband, and she came up to me after the screening, and she was in tears. And I was like, Di, why are you crying? What's going on? And I'll never forget it. She looked at me. She's like, it makes me so happy that you have somebody like that in your life, and so sad that I don't. And wow. so now I look at the film as just a way to put a little bit of this guy in everybody's life. I mean, that's, if anybody gets the inspiration and the appreciation for what it means to think for themselves and to just process the world in a way that helps you make sense of it, especially now. You know, that was the philosophy of Bob Gurland, right? Just go out there and be comfortable in what's happening to you, and go out there and derive the kind of meaning from your experience that makes the whole thing make sense. So,
well, one of the things I found very interesting was that Bob actually decided, well, if I'm going to understand my students, I'm going to have to live with them, and ended up being in the dorms with his students. I mean, what other professor would do that?
Well, it was wonderful experience. First of all, how generous he has been with his time and his energy. I am so grateful, and I'm so proud of him. And somehow it was wonderful. When I saw the original movie, I haven't seen the final product yet. I felt like I was Tom Sawyer sitting in the rafters at my funeral and listening to all and watching my life in some way. And it was so nice to have that reassurance when you're still alive, that people have appreciated you and that you have, lived well. And it's just a wonderful thing to somehow, most people people say wonderful things about them while they're lying in a box.
Yeah.
And to have it within you, while you're present, so to speak, is such a wonderful experience. It's such a wonderful thing, and I'm forever grateful to him. And I got to tell you, he is one hell of a teacher. He is going to be, I'm a talent scout, I can tell. I've seen him in action, and he's wonderful. And I just, the thought of having a movie made about you see what happens when you're in an institution and lived as long as I have. Essentially, you outlive everybody who's really experienced you from the standpoint of people who work at the institution. So that what happens is that people come when you're at the end of your life, and people don't really relate to you in the ways that people related to you in the process of your living. And
Sure.
it's very exciting. And son of my students said to me, "So, how do you feel now that you're at the end of your life?" I said, "Well, dying is relatively easy. It's living that's hard." And that happens to be true.
Absolutely. I want to make sure everybody knows that scrolling across the bottom of the screen is the website, bronxsocrates.com. As Joe was saying, it's going through the process of the film festival route in Tribeca, so it's not really available to watch yet. But if you go to bronxsocrates.com, you'll get information on the film. I'm sure it'll be updated as to
There's
where
also
it
a
will be
trailer
available.
there.
There's a trailer.
Give you
There's a trailer
sense of
there.
what it's about. Yeah.
Well,
So,
I hope that it serves to promote the beauty of the teaching life. It is a really wonderful way to spend your time, and it gives you a shot at immortality. I've said that it's the case, yet you die twice. You die when you exhale for the last time. That's your first death. The second is when your name is spoken for the last time. And it's interesting to have the opportunity to touch so many lives so that your being is somehow woven into the tapestry of so many lives, that it's sort of wonderful to know that there's people will still speak your name when in a positive way. I might add, not that son of a bitch who gave me a B plus when I needed an A minus. It's just wonderful. It's the greatest gift that someone has ever given to me, and I am very appreciative of it.
Well, Bob, I taught for 7 years. I have no idea how my students felt about me. I know their evaluations of me on paper were good, but the thing I'm proudest of in my life is having done this music festival, International Pop Overthrow. Now, this will be our 26th year in LA. Wow. I don't know what kind of a legacy I'm going to have. I do hear from bands who are thankful that they played. But last year, I was bestowed upon at the Cavern in Liverpool after 20 years of bringing bands there, over 2,000 of them. They gave me a brick on their wall of fame. And that'll be the best honor I probably ever get, because you can't beat being on this wall of fame. There's me with my wonderful wife, Rena, who has helped me do this festival tirelessly. Even though she's an aerospace engineer, she's had the strength to do that. But I'm one of the only non-musicians to have a brick on that wall. I'm up there with the Beatles and the Stones and so many other people. I can't tell you what that meant.
That's great.
So I'm sure there are people who think I'm a son of a bitch too, but yeah. But anyway, that's my thing. It's nowhere near yours, but I haven't done this for 60 years either. So
give it time.
It's great. And I grew up the son of a college professor in a college town, and I think that molded who I became throughout my life. My dad had always said, when you're dealing with people, remember, the last time you see somebody, you never know if that's going to be the last time you see somebody. So I try to treat everybody,
absolutely,
every moment that I do with that in mind. And my high school principal actually named his first son after me, because he was in our backyard one day before he had his children. And he looked at my dad's flower gardens, and he said, you have such beautiful flowers. And, my children are running around the backyard and they're destroying everything. They're destroying the flowers. I can't keep a flower garden. And my dad turned to him and said, I'll never forget that. He said, well, you can get busy raising flowers. You can get busy raising children. And he said, from that point on, I never worried about my flower garden, and I raised children. So moments and people, and that's what it's all about. And like this moment tonight we're having together, I'm going to remember this for a very long time.
Wow.
This is very powerful. Very powerful. I love it.
Bob,
I love it.
you've now been retired for 5 years. How has retirement been for you, and how much do you miss teaching?
Oh, I can't tell you, but I'll try. But I miss my audience. I miss having, and particularly, I have to say, in this time, when I'm sadly experiencing the unraveling of the country, that in a peculiar way, I said about this, that the money changers have entered the church of reason. It is a violation of logic to turn the care of others to a narcissist.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I said it's something like it touches something in the name of hiring a known pedophile to take care of your kids.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
And the notion that out of a country of 350 million people, this is what rose to the top. It's interesting. My not such funny, and I joke, it's not so much of a joke. I said that the president somehow is the embodiment of the three travelers on the yellow brick road: the scarecrow without a brain, the tin man without a heart, and the lion without a set of stones.
Well said.
That's pretty darn good.
I would just like to note the fact that Bob misses the audience of hundreds of kids hanging on every word, but I get the benefit of talking to this guy multiple times a week, and he runs this bit with me, and it is the most enlightening, satisfying life force that you could imagine, because again, Bob and I have been having dialogue like this for 35, 36 years. I mean, I can't, we can't even track it down anymore. And the ability to be the audience that helps him rationalize and process this stuff, and the same for me, right? It's a life force. I mean, I think it's some way to just sort of protect your own sanity against the chaos.
Well, I think that the educational system has failed our children. That is, in the end, they've morphed into the largest and most expensive babysitting operation known to Western man.
Yeah.
It's my mother used to say on a snow day, "You're going to be home?" Sending me to school, at least that was the place that got me out of the house. And she didn't care very much about what happened to me, except that I had to get A's. So she could talk to the neighbors and fight for bragging rights as to my kid is smarter than your kid kind of nonsense. But the truth of the matter is, we don't challenge our children, and they don't have to produce what in the end they really can. And it's a sadness, and it breaks my heart, I must say.
No,
but
that's
hey,
a very, very good point. Yeah.
Well, thankfully there are people like Joe who are here to carry on your legacy, and
well,
it's only right.
You take the teaching responsibility. I said, look out in a class, particularly when I was popular. You have 200, 300, 400 kids in a class, and I think about, you don't come to class unprepared, and you don't waste people's time. Right. You know, I always think of Mark Twain's line, "I never let schooling get in the way of my education." Well, it's kind of interesting. It's not about schooling; it's about educating, and schooling involves a kind of processing. You want independent kids who come out of school exercising real, genuine humanity, understanding that another person's life is worth as much to them as yours is to you. And to be able to, your humanity is dependent upon your ability to transcend yourself, to get in other people's shoes, to think instead of understanding a woman who comes with a kid and walks 1,000 miles across Mexico to gain entrance into this country, and to see her as part of an invasion of a horde of people who are somehow subhuman is so disheartening.
I agree.
I mean, you have to think about how desperate her life is like. I sometimes ask my students, if you had to leave tomorrow and leave your whole life behind you, what the hell would you take with you?
Right.
And they look at me and think about that.
Mm-hmm.
What would you take with you and walk away from a lifetime of collecting? You're a collector. What do you take?
I would take my brick. I have a replica of my brick. I would take that with me. That's being buried with me.
And the diamond Rolex that you traded all the other shit.
Yes.
Yeah,
for.
right.
Interesting.
Well, maybe we after this is all said and done.
I like a watch. A watch has a geometry. It shows time geometrically. I hate those digital clocks where you see the seconds going a mile a minute past you, and it's produces a little anxiety.
Well, what's interesting is when I was watching the documentary, I noticed you were wearing some nice watches, and I kept wondering what was he wearing. I couldn't quite tell, but I knew you liked them. Yeah.
Well, maybe we can get this documentary as a standard fare for every high school in the country as a senior to watch it before they head on to all their experiences post high school. From
your mouth to God's ears, Mark. The more people that understand what one great professor can do, I think the better off the world is. So
exactly.
If I did anything remotely that matches up to the material, people will understand that what you can walk away from any engagement with somebody who's willing to share their time and their insights is to go out there and lead a better life. And there's no better example of it than this guy. And there's no better, I mean, legitimately somebody in one of the folks that were interviewed in the film said, when you think about put aside the sort of academic criteria of what it makes a professor, a university professor. When you think about teaching, there's probably not a more important teacher of philosophy in the last half a century than Bob Gurland. So, and I think that is not only a nice thought, but it is an objectively demonstrable truth.
Right.
When you think about the lives and the people who attribute a better version of life that they're living because of him.
No, absolutely. I will take that to my grave as well.
Wow.
You know, I don't know that I would have gone into the teaching profession if not for Bob. And I didn't really like school, but the one thing that no, I mean the one.
No,
and you knew that, Bob. I had told you that as a student. It's like, but I mean, there were a lot of trying to get to NYU from Rockland County for a 9 o'clock class with Bob. That was a struggle, but I made it.
Yes, my students always beg me, "Can't you teach in the afternoon?" I said, "I'm a morning dude," and that's the way it is. But it's true, you know. You never know what the students will take away. You just don't know, and I'm always, in some sense, surprised when they come back to me and say, "Hey, you did this, you did that for me," and so on. And it's always a surprise to me, but it's also terrifically gratifying.
Sure.
That they care enough to spend their time to reach out to me. And I'm in touch with so many of them, or so many of them are in touch with me, that it's really a gift.
Yeah, there's a moment in the film that every time I see it, it's touching. It begins and ends with this pile of the thousands of letters and emails that he has received and printed along the last half a century, and we're randomly sort of just going through them for about an hour to get this footage. So you don't know what you're going to pick up, you don't know what you're going to grab. And in a short little note, some student that had him in the early 90s says, "It is truly amazing to me how somebody that I've spent in relative terms so little time with can have such a profound and meaningful impact on my life. Thank you for the inspiration. And that just, I probably talked to and engaged with hundreds of students in the process of doing this. And that little nugget was encapsulated in everybody's expression of gratitude. Like, how could this little amount of time in the grand scheme of my life have such an outsized impact on how I see the world, what I want to do, who I want to be, and how I want to get to some meaning out of this experience. And that's worth its weight in gold. I can't imagine a life better lived than
one of the nicest things a student wrote to me the other day was, I've had a lot of professors, but only one teacher.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's heavy. Yeah, that's really good. Well, I want to make sure everybody sees that cover again. We've been popping it up as we talk about it, but there it is.
I look at that
Bronx.
picture and I say, where did he go?
Yeah. I really thought this was the other Bob Gurland in the picture.
The other one actually doesn't play real trumpet.
Which is great. It's great. But Bronx Socrates, the extraordinary legacy of Professor Bob Gurland, as we talked earlier, and we put the banner across the bottom, bronxsocrates.com. It's going through the stages via Tribeca Film Festival, and of course the whole film festival process. So there will be a point in the not too distant future where you'll be able to see that the trailer is on the website, but just stay tuned to the website, and they'll let you know where you'll be able to see the whole thing. And I recommend everybody check it out. I have not seen it. David's seen it, but I cannot wait to see it. And of course, if it gets into Tribeca, I will be up there to be part of the.
I'm holding you to that, Mark. I'm holding you to that, Mark.
I can't wait to see it either.
I have to get my passport renewed so I can get up from South Jersey.
We'll smuggle you in. There's an underground railway that gets into.
You know where it is. Okay, good.
I'll pick you up in Hoboken. It's fine. We'll get you there.
Well, what an awesome.
If nothing else, when I do come back to New York in November to do the festival, I will definitely get together with both of you.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it, David.
It's going to be great. It's wonderful seeing you again, David.
Thank you so much, Bob. And likewise, of course.
I remember you when you were but a child. A youngster. Not quite a child.
I'll never grow up.
Wonderful.
That's a good thing.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for having us. Really appreciate it.
Absolute pleasure. Bob Gurland, Joe DiSalvo, Bronx Socrates. Once again, it looks like that. It's going to be out in the not too distant future. Everybody check it out. I also want to do a shout out to the mouth trumpet, Bob Gurland. I know he's still watching in the room. So thank you so much, other Bob, for being a part of the show. And we will talk to you in the near future as well. Gentlemen, best of luck with everything. This has been an absolute blast.
Joe, all the best with the documentary. May you achieve the success with it that is so richly deserved. And Bob, may you be on this earth, not above it, not below it, for many more years to come.
Well, I'll do my best. I have a motto. I always tell my son, GGG. Give ground grudgingly. And that's what I do.
Absolutely.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Have a great one. Thank you, Joe and Bob.
Thank you both.
Bye, guys.
Great to see you. Bye-bye. Oh, that was so much. That was so much fun and so gratifying. And it couldn't have gone any better.
No, it was, I have to be honest. I knew this was a big show for you. I didn't have much connection to it. And I learned to make the connection that I needed to make to it. But I'm very grateful that you presented this idea. Grateful to have spent some time with Bob and Joe. Absolutely amazing show. I don't think I've laughed harder with any show that we did.
Right.
The mouth trumpet solo by other Bob Gurland.
Oh
It's hard to juggle. I hate to call him other Bob Gurland, but just to keep it straight, that was
that for a while.
Proudly. I know. It's just it's something else. We're gonna go for all kinds of garlic.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, no, it was just it really was a lot of fun, and what a life well lived and still going strong. and I hope they could reap the rewards of getting this documentary not only in Tribeca but other film festivals, and get it out there for people to, especially young people. Young people should see this.
Yeah, especially as they point out, in light of what's going on with education in this country, it's really, really necessary.
Yeah, no, very much so. Fantastic. Really good one. You were very lucky to have him for the time that you had him as a professor. Makes me a tad bit jealous, but I'll get over it by the time the show ends.
Please.
Good. And speaking of that, what do we got going on in the future here? We got a bunch of things happening, really. And we wanted to talk.
I'm sorry. We've got a couple of guests coming up.
A
couple. Let me think about that.
Well, we have a few,
Yeah.
but it's hard. It's hard to. Well, let's talk about it the next couple of weeks. Then we'll talk about a change here a little bit. Next week, next Wednesday, we're going back to Norway and having a wonderful singer-songwriter from Norway. He's got a ton of great albums out. Mr. Tom Hell is going to be on the show. Just a fantastic singer-songwriter. He has worked with a lot of people that I'm kind of in touch with my Scandinavian pop detective stuff. He's got a relatively new album that just came out in January called Candy, which is amazing. He's done duets with Marit Larsen and had some smash hits in Norway from that. I'm just really looking forward to the talent that is Tom Hell being on the show, and it's going to be great.
All I have to say is Mr. and Mrs. Hell had to have been proud of him.
Good stuff. After that, on April 9th,
On April 9th, we have another great singer-songwriter. Long and rich history in this here music business. In the later 70s, he had a band in New York called the Poppies, which got the attention of Greg Shaw at Bomp Records, and they released his single. I don't remember the B-side, but the A-side was If She Cried, which is a great power pop, Mersey beat kind of tune. And he parlayed that into a major label deal with the band Sorrows, a New York power pop band who released 2 albums on Columbia in the early 80s. Since then, he kind of fell off my radar at that point, but about 20 years later, we rediscovered him in Los Angeles, where he had put together another band and was releasing records. And was still doing a lot of pop stuff. He wound up signing with Big Stir, has released several records on Big Stir, including a brand new one, and I hope I can find it. Give me a second here. As usual, I'm lax in getting prepared. Here we go. Parting is Such Sweet Sorrow. Now, this is a brand new album on Big Stir, and this really would serve as the third Sorrows album. It's a bunch of tunes that weren't released at the time, maybe because they had lost their deal with Columbia and had nowhere to they didn't have a home for it. But Big Stir gave it a home, and let me tell you, it is wonderful, which is no surprise. In the interim, there were here's one of the things, and Arthur, I'm sure, will illuminate this, but so often, and we've heard this from our guests, in fact, so often was the case that the first time they actually heard their released album was after it was released, and they were so disappointed in what the major label had done with it that after it was recorded, the label sent in their people to remix it, and in the artist's opinion, kind of ruined it. That's how Arthur feels about the Sorrows albums. So through the courtesy of Big Stir, Arthur went back in the studio, added some vocals, added some instruments, took out some stuff here and there, and put out the albums within the past few years as he would have liked them to sound. And let me tell you, they sound even better. I mean, they really do. So, yeah, so there's a bunch of Sorrow stuff on on Big Stir, as well as the new album. And I just realized the pun, "Parting is such sweet sorrow," because this again would have served as a third Sorrows album, but they parted from. The pool man is here. I'll be right back.
Nobody really knows who the pool man is. Word has it we might have the pool man as a special guest on Material Issues about 2 months from now. But so David was just talking. That's April 9th. That's Arthur Alexander, primarily to us known from the Sorrows. So we're going to have him on.
The pool man, but someone was actually polite enough to come to the door and ask if they could pick lemons off our tree.
Oh, was it Bob Gurland?
There's another Bob Gurland. Yeah, it's a woman, actually.
Bobby Gurland.
Named Bobby, Bobbie. Yeah. Anyhow, most people just grab them without permission. It's like,
I hate when people grab my lemons. I hate it.
Well, it depends on who's grabbing them. I'm sure there's some people you're very happy to have grab them. But in this case, no, she actually asked permission, which is really cool.
Nice, yeah.
Or she asked for 2 of them, so maybe there'll be 10 gone, but who knows?
Well, there's also a lot. There's a lot of people when I walk dogs, especially when I take them, around towns or elsewhere. Younger children, like I go call them children, today are being trained or being taught by their parents to ask if they can pet your dog before just reaching in.
I think they should.
And that's very nice to say, "May I pet your dog?" And it's always nice to say, "Yes, of course," because my dogs are good with people. But there are those dogs that are not, and it's a good thing to ask. But so we got Tom Hell next week. We've got Arthur Alexander the following Wednesday, and then everything's going to change the week after that. Let me play this little promo, and here's the surprise we were going to talk about. It goes something like this.
While you do that, I'll be right back.
Yep, here we go.
Yes,
there you have it. Very good. Material Issues will be moving to Sunday nights starting April 13th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And that's going to be our new time. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be mostly always on Sunday night. We are talking with some guests that are asking for possibly a different night. So if we have a special evening, we'll just call it a special presentation on a different night or different time. But for now, the new date and time is going to be Sunday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern.
I think we both agree that this would be more convenient for a lot of people to watch live.
Right.
So, hopefully it does raise our profile a bit, increase our numbers. And
what we're hoping to do that first Sunday, David and I talked about it. It'll just be David and I think we're going to both pick 5 of our really favorite pop, power pop, whatever tunes that maybe you're not that familiar with, and we're going to play them that Sunday night and talk about why they.
Okay, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about kind of why. The Material Issues dancers. It's taken 200 episodes. They finally got the choreography down.
You tell us when you want to apply, and we'll do it.
Yeah, when I saw Jordan's outfit, I was like, maybe we shouldn't, but it's fine. We'll let him do it.
People actually, and I mean, Jordan has admitted this, so I can say it, but people have actually said that back in the day that Jordan looked a bit like Gino Vanelli.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, he can, he's got the hair, and he could, just put on the tight bell-bottom pants and the open shirt down to his navel, and do a little polka for us.
And there goes the few viewers we have. It's all great. No, it's all good. So yeah, Sunday night. That first Sunday night will be David and I just playing some music that we would love you to hear. And then the following Sunday we got someone booked. Yeah.
Yeah, I just realized this. I knew we had a guest. For some reason I couldn't recall who it was, but it's a gentleman who, those of you who live out in LA and were part of the pop scene will certainly be familiar with. For many years, he starting in the mid 90s, I believe, he had a band called the Piper Downs, and they used to play all kinds of pop shows around the LA area. And then they played IPO almost every year that we did it while they were still together. They even came out to Liverpool.
That's where I saw them, yeah.
As well as other cities. Like I know they came to San Francisco. They came to New York, to Chicago. There might be a few others in there. But yeah, they were definitely a big part of IPO. Then, unfortunately, the rhythm section, Yell and Ellen, moved to Texas. And so the Piper Downs had broken up. But our guest, certainly not to rest on those laurels, wanted to continue making music. And in fact, he has a brand new album under the name Bobby Bogner's Handsome. And I asked Bobby, so does that mean you're handsome or that you own a handsome? Or maybe the rest of the band is handsome? He said,
or handsome.
Right. Anyway, the album is called And Then Some. And he just did a release show on Friday. Rena and I attended. It went really great. But he, we're not just having him on because of his music. He's a real Renaissance man. He was a national Scrabble champion for 3 years running. I think he used to go down to Narlands and participate, and I think he won it a few times. And he was also on Rock and Roll Jeopardy. He won quite a bit of money there as well. And he had a.
Could this be a stump? Could this be a Bash versus Bogner coming up?
I'd be more than happy to. I don't know that the 70s were in his wheelhouse exactly, but he's got a varied amount, enough to beat the other two people.
Yeah.
But maybe he's best known for having a food-oriented show on the History Channel for many years. He's going to send me a bio, and so next week
Nice.
after the show, we'll take a closer look at what Bobby has done. But he has done a lot, and he's also very entertaining. He'll be a great guest, no doubt about it.
Awesome. So, I think it's funny because, many times we talk like, well, we got a guest next week, but then we don't have anybody for a couple of weeks, but you never know. Stay tuned to materialissues.com, subscribe. And this is one of those moments where we're projecting, the next 4 or 5 weeks, we got a lot of things going on. So, make sure you subscribe.
Andy, sleep earlier and later.
Yeah. Take a nap, Andy.
By all means,
and then
be awake at 1 a.m. UK time, no doubt.
But we've got two guests the next 2 Wednesdays. Then we have the brand new Sunday night time slot with David and I, followed the following week by Bobby Bogner on our first Sunday night guest. So we hope everybody goes to materialissues.com. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, it doesn't cost you anything. You just hit the subscribe. That would be great, and let all your friends know.
Yeah, and I should point out. Oh, thank you so much, Tim.
Thanks,
we hope to continue to see you on that night. Mark is currently speaking with a potential guest. We have, Jordan.
Yeah, we've had three Calcils.
A couple of years ago, we had Bob, Susan, and Paul as guests. And I'll be meeting another Calcil in a couple of weeks. And hopefully we can get him as well as his wife.
Yep, that'd be good, Vicky.
To be. Hey, you're giving it away, as if people couldn't have figured out who I was talking about anyway.
Well, yeah, okay.
So, yeah, we're hoping. I have to speak with them, and hopefully they'll be up for it. Henry Calcil.
I think there was a Henry. I mean,
we haven't even gotten Jordan Calcil yet.
Henry might have been the 8th Calcil. I think he was called.
I Henry see the 8th there. Yeah. So anyway,
we got irons in the fire. Yep. Yeah, we got irons in the fire.
No, but this one iron you have in the fire, would be an amazing guest if you can get him. Rock and Roll Hall of Famer with his band, and just
we'll see.
This would be great. So hopefully that.
I've got 2 on the hook right now.
Oh,
the second one I'll tell you about, because it's not definite, but we'll tell you about after the show ends. It's pretty cool. So
okay.
So, yeah, it's all good. See, that's why you have to subscribe at materialissues.com, because we send one email out early in, like on a Monday or Tuesday. Now, if it's a Sunday show, you'll probably send it out on Thursday or Friday about Sunday. So subscribe. And we got a lot of great, we got 197 episodes that'll be archived now. So check them all out.
Crazy. Yeah.
It's really cool.
I don't think we had any idea it would go this far, and who knows, maybe we'll make it to 1,000 even. Brandon Cruz, interesting. There are a lot of people, and I know you were serious with that one, Jordan, but there are a lot of people that we would love to have, and a lot of times it's just a matter of, can you get a hold of them?
Yeah.
I mean, we've had some amazing guests. I mean, I would not have been able to get Gilbert O'Sullivan if I didn't know somebody, brother, Elliot Kendall, who worked with him, and he was happy to get him to be on the show. You never know who, but sometimes you can't get to the people themselves. So and then you have to go through agents, and then it becomes it usually becomes a very soulless endeavor where you wind up not being able to get the people, or not even able to get the agent to respond. I'm sure he is.
Check it out.
And we won't be able to get his father, Bill Bixby, unfortunately, but that would have been nice. But and sometimes guests say, your numbers aren't good enough.
Brandon.
Yeah. Sometimes guests say your numbers aren't good enough, and we have to send them to the cornfield, but that's another matter entirely. I'm so glad I was able to send him to the cornfield by unexpected. That was a great moment. Better than if we had him on. I would.
But the point is, we've had a lot of incredible guests. Tonight was a wonderful show.
Oh my God.
And we've got some great things going on in the future. So come hang out with us the Sunday night. We're going to see how that changes some numbers and things. And, we're always going to have a good time no matter who's here.
Jordan, stop it.
He's on a roll now.
I have a story about Corey Feldman. I never met him, but I heard this from a door person at one of the venues we used for IPO. He said one time he was doing door at a different club in LA, Martini Lounge, and Corey Feldman comes in, and the door guy, he knows who Feldman is, but he also knows he's not on the list. So he says, all right, that'll be $10. And he said, what do you mean $10? He said, that's the admission. And apparently Feldman started jumping up and down like a 3-year-old saying, but I'm Corey Feldman. I'm Corey Feldman. And the doorman said, I don't care who you are. Your name's not on the list. So apparently Feldman, got all petulant, grabbed a $10 bill from his wallet, wadded it up, and threw it at the guy. Yeah.
Classy.
So I don't want Erwin Corey Feldman or any Corey Feldman on this show. I'll have Barbara Feldon, but not Corey Feldman.
Yeah, Barbara Feldon.
Be great. That would
indeed.
Like, again, you never know who you know, and who they know.
I'll tell you what, Bob Gurland probably knows Barbara Feldon. She lives in New York. I wouldn't be surprised.
You might. Maybe she was one of the students. No, she wouldn't have been. But what
a great night.
What was amazing, he's 91. He's still sharp as a tack. I mean, granted, he doesn't speak as quickly. And I don't think he quite has the energy he had to speak just uninterrupted for 10 minutes like he used to in class. But he's still got it. He really does still have it.
Very much so.
I have a feeling he's going to continue to have it as long as he lives.
It's awesome. Yeah. That was great. I look forward to Bronx Socrates coming out, and look forward to seeing it. I hope it gets into Tribeca. I'd love to go up for that. That'd be great. That'd be awesome. But
Jordan, Jordan, you might be St. Louis Nietzsche. Let's work on that.
That's awesome. All right, everybody. Well, this has been a great almost 2 hours again on material issues. It's been great hanging out with you. I hope everybody comes back next Wednesday for Tom Hell. If you're not familiar with Tom Hell, just go on Spotify and listen to his latest album, Candy, plus many other albums.
Go on Spotify, go to hell, and
Go to hell.
Yeah,
and check it out. Yeah, he's I'm very big on Scandinavian pop, and he's an amazing singer-songwriter. But check it out. He'll be live from Norway next Wednesday.
That's great. Yeah, one of the great insults when you were a kid, if someone said to you, go to hell, you'd say, I went there, but your mother said you weren't home. That was a great insult when you were a kid.
It was a great insult. Yeah,
Michael Shea, yeah, you know what, Jordan, I do know people who know him, and I actually, before we started this show, I had thought, a lot about I'd love to meet him when I go to Chicago, but you're right. This might be a good time. For those who don't know, Michael Chabon is a huge Cubs fan and a huge power pop fan. So he would be great to have. But anyway, yeah. Cool. So everyone have a great rest of your week. We hope to see you next week. We'll be on Wednesday for 2 more episodes. And then 4 days later, we'll start with episode number 200, Sunday, April 13th. So until next week, have a great rest of your week. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Love to Rena.
Love to Chesinati.
Cheers, everybody. Have a great one.
Yeah.